Hello, welcome. Certainly glad you could join me today. Today I thought I could introduce you to some fine capstone projects. I'll tell you what, let's start out and have them run all the equipment across the screen that you need to film along with us. While they're doing that, let me show you what films I'll be talking about. I have my two good old films up here, and we're going to talk about both of them one by one, going through each process of visual decision makings that I did so that you can follow right along. Looks like we're going to start with Never Too Old by Nick Harpence. Okay, let's do it. Alright, let's discuss Nick's project. Never Too Old is about Vlad, a vampire who is trying to fit into that college life. Simple enough. The thing is, Nick wanted to capture the story in a unique way, a style of a mockumentary. The idea is that Vlad, the main protagonist, hired a documentary crew to capture this unique moment of his life. Approaching this idea as a cinematographer was interesting. Nick was clearly inspired by the classics like The Office, where there's frequent use of camera movement, framing, and zooms to enhance that mockumentary aesthetic. To simulate the presence of a camera crew within the given environment, movements often respond to actions to indicate that the camera operator is mostly improvising their framing as the action unfolds. As we watched the scene, I used the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. We didn't need a sound team, so we just stuck a shotgun microphone on top of the camera. No, we didn't film the entire thing on a pocket camera. But because of the nature of the project, I did need a camera that was lightweight, could handle occasional long takes, and have good resolution with great color science. The Ursa Mini from Magic was perfect for this application, so I planned the entire shoot to be shot on the Ursa. Alongside the Ursa, I wanted to use some special lenses for this project. I wanted to incorporate mid-take zooms that is frequently used in this genre. Zooming in and out of the subject's mid-take give a certain comedic effect, but it also gives me great flexibility on set when needing to adjust framing quickly as needed. I ended up choosing the DZO Film Pictor zoom lenses. These lenses weren't chosen just because they look cool. It actually solved a lot of common problems when trying to use a zoom lens as a cinematographer. Let's go over these issues. If anyone has used a DSLR with photo zoom lenses, you may be familiar of those moments when the camera loses focus of a subject when adjusting the focal length. This isn't that big of a deal for still photography, but for video, it means that you have to constantly adjust the focus as you change the focal length mid-take. And since we're using cinema cameras and lenses that don't support autofocus, this means that the job of my first ACs, or my focus pullers, would be infinitely harder. A lens that maintains its focus while changing the focal length is called a parfocal lens. And after doing some decent camera tests, I verified that this lens was indeed parfocal. Most cheap zoom lenses are actually pretty awful when talking about aperture. For those who may not know, the aperture ring adjusts depth of field and exposure of an image. Let me show you why cheap zoom lenses cause issues. It may not be obvious, but the brightness of the image changes as we change the focal length. This is a problem for post-production since maintaining the look while the exposure changes means that we would have to increase and decrease the noise floor as zooms happen on screen. Cheap zooms are also usually slow, and yes, that's an actual term. Slow lenses indicate that it can't open their aperture as much, basically meaning that the brightness of an image is limited. This would mean that we would need to boost the ISO setting of the camera in order to capture more light, but it means that we would need to increase the noise floor once again. During testing of these lenses, I verified that the exposure remained the same under different focal lengths and the lens was decently fast enough with a t-stop of 2.8. I didn't go over all of the problems of a cheap lens, but a cinema zoom lens that solves just these two issues usually costs an insane amount. This is potentially why the Sofa Cage doesn't have any cinema zoom lenses. But the DZO film lenses are relatively affordable and perform well considering its price point. Expressway had them for a great rental price, so it was an easy decision considering my stinky bank account. I wish I could dive more into the creative decision making of other aspects like the lighting and the variety of certain looks. And in some cases, I did try to incorporate more creative decisions for certain moments, but due to valid feedback about the mood drastically changing and how those moments felt out of place with the mockumentary, most of those decisions were unfortunately cut out in the edit. For example, I wanted to try and break the documentary limitations by allowing myself to go with fiction rules during the fight scene. I wanted to represent Vlad's POV with another funky lens, the Petzval lens that I own, to represent his perspective when under stress and pain. Luckily, some creative elements did remain during that scene thanks to Miles Stelling's coloring choice when Vlad shows his true power. Overall though, I had so much fun working on this project and the vibes were fantastic. I was very happy working with Nick, Bridget, and Knight trying to film a story with comedy in mind, because without them I don't think I would have been as comfortable as on set. Shoot, what a great film. I hope everyone followed along nice and easy. But what the heck, we have one more film to talk about. We have a special surprise from Miles Flusser. Now you might be familiar with his work, as he's a very careful director with a very unique visual decision making. Let's see how we can manage this one. And with that, we're gonna take off and we're gonna have a super time. Today we're gonna briefly discuss about this known figure, Miles Flusser, a documentary about this 100-and-something-year-old ballet dancer, retired. He also was a veteran, and he lives in New York City. He owns a beautiful home in the beautiful corner of New York City with his awesome-looking building. We set up a weekend. We take minimal amount of gear. We only take the crucial crew, such as the producer, Johnny Gates, the colorist / DIT, Allison Paoni, and obviously the director of photography, Daniel Park. This is so stupid. So 4 people total get in a car. We drive all the way to New York City. Now we're practically at his doorstep. We already practiced all the camera angles. We already have the fantastic questions. All we need to do is wait for him to come out of this door and... Ooh, sorry, 1 second. Okay. You know, hiccups during documentaries about sensitive subjects do happen. Even though the schedule is kind of packed with all the other capstones, maybe we can find another week. The crew was now hopeless. They had nothing but scraps that they filmed in New York City. Miles and Daniel didn't know what to do. We could at least film some cool ballet dancer footage right before in-progress screenings, they said. And so they did. After a small session with the dancers, Miles gathered all the scraps that the crew gathered and came up with an edit that was very experimental. It was so far off of what he originally had in mind. But the fall semester already passed. There were no more weekends for him. Looks like they're gonna have a rough screening session with critical feedback. Everyone will think they wasted a semester, and there were Wait, everyone liked Miles' experimental approach? So yes, we now had a new approach for this film. An experimental exploration about a fading world that uses the natural form of the body, nature, and structures. I newly learned about the concept of visual poetry thanks to this project. It was a completely new world, and I definitely wasn't an expert in this field. But I took the leap and tried to make it work. Presenting this project for my craft presentation is gonna be a bit rough because this is a film that I truly had no plan with. Every visual element was pretty much improvised and relied on what Miles felt as appropriate for this film. Because of the improvisational nature of this project's shoot plans, I mostly had to get equipment last minute, which meant that I had to get whatever was available, working around workshop films and capstone films. Initially, I was planning to use just the Ursa, but now I ended up using pretty much all the major cinema cameras that our school had. The RA Alexa, the Ursa Mini, the Pocket Cinema camera, the Canon C300 Mark III, even the Canon 5D Mark IV. This didn't stop in my lens choices either, and I am not reading all of that. If I covered every technical workflow for each shot of the film, I can easily go over the given 30-minute time block, but I can talk about a couple of shots. The first shot, the still of Lauren, the ballet dancer, was inspired by the original still that Miles used for his in-progress screening cut. Yes, we fully recreated the lighting setup and used the stills camera with a 200 to 400mm lens, then I took that photo. I'm no photo student, but I thought that using my cinematography skills to take this photo was fun and worth doing. The top-down shot of Lauren was also a fun one. I had to learn how to mount a camera on the magic soundstage batten. I had to mount my own Pocket 6K camera since it was the lightest possible build and theoretically the safest way to approach hanging a camera on top of a subject. Pretty much all of the angles shot in the stage that had the camera move up was shot on the Pocket. Alright guys, what's up? It's 11:30 p.m. or something. I just rigged up this nice little camera system, you know. Don't mind all the stuff, you know what I'm saying? We got the lens and we got the camera and we got the car. I also used a couple of unique lenses, the 24mm probe lens and the macro lenses from the photo cage. Thanks to the Pocket 6K being an EF mount camera, I was able to mount the Canon photo lenses with no issue and captured high resolution shots with great success. I used the 24mm probe lens in combination with the Chetman dolly to create this impossible long take of the locket. In the edit, there is a cut in between, but in the actual shot was one continuous take from the super wide into the super close-up. Miles also wanted me to have a light shine from the inside of the locket, but since that was physically impossible, I just shined the laser pointer into the crack to simulate the light coming from the inside. But let's go back to explain that lens. The 24mm probe lens makes small objects look extremely massive due to the unique small and long build of the lens. This made the tiny grandfather clock look like a giant tower. Combining this look with the macro lens elements, we got a pretty unique perspective of the clock for Miles to use for his composites. Yes, this project had a rough start and throughout the process gave me an unexpected challenge, but at the same time it gave me the most amount of creative freedom out of all of my sofa films. I was proud of what I was able to achieve, but I can't take all of the credit since Miles led the project with his unique visual direction and confidence with his compositing. The process made me realize that I can fully support a specific vision using my technical abilities and variety of cinematography techniques. 제가 RIT에서 되게 소중한 시간을 마치면서 한국인으로서 무작위를 경험할 수 있었던 것들을 돌이키기 시작했는데 계속 웃음을 짓게 되네요. 많은 친구들과 가족들과 함께 다양한 문화를 경험함으로써 참 다채로운 삶을 살게 됐네라고 생각이 듭니다. 남미에서 대부분의 삶을 보낸 후에 이제 미국에서 젊은 어른의 경험을 마치게 됩니다. 근데 제 배경과 경험에도 불구하고 외국에서 살면서 급변하는 시대에 발맞추기가 어려워지면서 제 의사소통하는 능력이 많이 떨어진 것 같아요. 저에게는 집이라는 개념이 전혀 없고 한국어를 제 모국어라고도 할 수 있는 상황이 더 이상 없어져 버린 것 같습니다. 제 기술적인 문제 해결에 대한 애정 덕분에 영화 촬영을 전공하기로 결정했는데 협업하는 데 있어서 의사소통 능력이 부족하다는 것을 항상 인식했어요. 선배로서의 지위에 접어들면서 졸업 프로젝트들을 위해 영화 촬영 기술을 담당한다는 생각이 참 무서웠습니다. 이야기를 전달하고 감정을 표현하는 능력이 저에겐 부족하고 어려움을 겪을 거라는 것이 걱정이 컸어요. 기술적인 능력은 충분하다고 봤는데 창의적인 결정권 그리고 실행하는 능력에는 자신감이 없었어요. 제가 대학교 3학년 후반에 이르러 소파 학생으로서의 제 위치도 의문스럽기 시작했죠. 그때쯤 잭팩 교수님께서 사운드 이론 효과 수업에서 월이의 전반부를 사용했어요. 저는 항상 월리가 제가 가장 좋아하는 영화 중에 하나라고 계속 알고 있긴 있었는데 이번에 상영하면서 다시 한번 그 이유를 깨닫게 됐어요. 대화의 사용을 최소화하면서 이야기를 전달하는 능력 때문에 이 영화를 사랑했던 기억이 다시 떠오르기 시작했죠. 로봇이 말 대신에 행동으로 자신을 표현하는 이야기를 오디오 비주얼 요소로 복잡하게 조합해가지고 전달하는 거가 저에게 되게 큰 안정감을 줬어요. 이러한 점이 저에게 중요했던 이유가 주변의 다양한 배경, 문화, 그리고 다양한 언어를 사용하는 사람들에 둘러싸이면서 진짜 의사소통하기 힘들었던 시절이 있었어요. 생각해보면 제가 스스로를 표현할 수 있는 방법이 동영상 만드는 과정밖에 없었다는 게 기억이 나기도 해요. 그렇게 깨닫게 되면서 저랑 협업하는 동료들과 자신감 있게 일을 진행할 수 있었고, 그들의 졸업 프로젝트들을 위해서 계속 일할 수 있는 힘이 다시 생겼습니다. 닉 핫펜스의 네버 토월드는 코미디 다큐멘터리 스타일을 취한 작품으로서 카메라의 움직임을 이용해 카메라맨이라는 새로운 캐릭터를 도입하는 도전을 제시해 주었습니다. 비정형적인 카메라 움직임과 포지셔닝을 도입하면서 각기 독특한 프레임 방식을 가진 두 명의 카메라맨을 모방하는 스타일을 적용했죠. 영화의 코미디적인 성격과 분위기를 표현하기엔 어려움이 있을 거라 생각했는데, 프로듀서 브리짓 해리가 스태프들의 분위기와 감정을 잘 다뤄줘서 코미디적인 비트와 움직임을 잘 찾아주고 큰 도움이 됐습니다. 마일스 플러서의 외부에서 과한 관심을 받고 있어 프로젝트는 매우 추상적인 개념을 다루면서 지속적인 기술 문제 해결에 대한 도전이었습니다. 마일스는 시각적인 부분에 집중하는 감독으로서 다양한 장면에 접근하는 방식에 대한 명확한 비전을 가지고 있어서 저는 그의 방향성을 존중했습니다. 데드라인이 되게 가까워지면서 제작 과정이 급격하게 변할 때가 많았지만 카메라 부분에서 최대한의 지원을 제공하고 적극적으로 대처하는 방식으로 문제를 해결하게 되었습니다. 졸업 작품으로서 갑작스럽게 실험적인 정신으로 갔던 것이 되게 예상치 못한 도전이었으면 저에게 가장 큰 창의적인 자유를 주게 됐고, 마일즈의 비전과 프로세스를 지원하는 방법을 발견할 수 있는 기회를 제공했습니다. 카메라 감독으로서의 유연성을 제가 이 프로젝트를 통해서 예상치 못하게 발견한 것 같습니다. 덕분에 큰 자신감을 갖게 되었고, 귀한 협력자가 될 수 있는 능력이 있다는 것을 귀하게 배우게 됐습니다. 소파에서 만난 많은 사람들 덕분에 저는 자신 있는 영화 제작사로서의 내 자신을 발견하게 된 것 같은데 너무 행복하고 고맙습니다. 하나님께, 여기랑 한국에 계신 가족분들께, 그리고 전 세계에 있는 모든 친구들에게 깊은 감사를 드리며 앞으로도 계속해서 같이 협력할 수 있기를 바랍니다.